The other day we were at the church and they were talking about Mary and Joseph. Mary and Joseph were going to Bethlehem. And no one knew this young couple, just villagers, coming and the Messiah would be born of them. No one knew that. So God used ordinary people. Well, that's exactly what happened in Van. God used ordinary people. I'm going to talk about a few of them that you may never have heard of, because I thought this was so personal. And really, so horrible too. One of them was Shirin Hagopian. He was in one of the villages, and they had decided to get all the people from the villages together and to walk them to Aikestan, which is a suburb of Van. By the way, there were two areas where they were fighting, Aikestan and Van. So he had to get these villagers together, so he was out working. He was not in his village. When the people from the village left, his wife was sick. So she couldn't leave, and so couldn't a lot of older people, and some children, among them his 4 children. Well, he's out there helping the people, gathering all these people while his family's in the village. They went back trying to get them, but the village was surrounded. He couldn't get them out. So his wife and children died. They were killed. But this never stopped him. He took all these people, gathered them, and got them safely to Van. And then we see his name coming up more and more. He did this and he did that. He was hurting, of course, but he never let it stop him. Another one was in the village of Shushats, and this came from that Kerem Vartanyan's book. The villagers were, well, they didn't have many, excuse me, they did not have many guns. But as you know, the Turkish soldiers would come and they would say, give us your guns, because they wanted to take them before massacring them. Well, they would come day after day and they would beat the men and they would break their bones. It was so bad that the villagers decided, let's get some old rifles together and give it to them so they'll leave us alone. But that did not satisfy them. This time they got all the men together and they started a huge bonfire. This is what the commander did. And he said, if you do not bring the guns to us, we are going to take these, whatever, I guess it was skewers. They had put them in the fire. And they said, we're going to go and burn your men if you don't do this. So everybody was scared to death and they didn't know what to do. Well, lo and behold, a bunch of women come over there, Armenian women. They get their pails of water and dump it on the fire. And one of them, named Baidzat, turns to this commander, and she's really mad at him. She says, if you keep this up, we're going down to the city to complain about you. This is when before, you know, the Van thing has started. Well, this man was taken aback, so he left. But she saved the life of these people. But, you know, when you think of the courage, here they are, they can do anything to you, and these women jumped up. I just want to show you that it wasn't just the men who were courageous, so were the women. Then we look at the defense itself, and we see the people working. The children, the young children, would go out there and get the cartridges, empty cartridges. At night they would fill them up with powder, and in the morning they would take those to the soldiers so they could fight, because they did not have enough ammunition. The women had gotten groups together, so they would sew for the men. Everybody was doing something, or they would help in the hospital. What I was really amazed about, there were these villagers who really couldn't fight. They didn't have guns, they didn't know how to fight, but they knew how to use a shovel. So they would dig the trenches for the people, and then they would build the walls with the help of the masons. They would help build walls or the ramparts. Well, every day those ramparts would go down because the Turks were bombing and shooting at them. Every night they would go and rebuild them. Well, it got so bad toward the end that they were getting ruined 4 or 5 times a day. And these men would still go out with those bullets coming at them, and they would still rebuild them. And what was interesting, when one would die, the next one would take the place. It was like there was no fear. They were together, they were working together. The defense lasted from April 18 till May 15. And like I said, the Russian army came. Well, of course, this was great. But then the Russians had their own, what should I say, their own ideas about this. They wanted Armenia without Armenian. They pulled their army back. And so the people of Van had no recourse but to leave with them. So they went back to Armenia. But then some of them decided to come back because they thought they could still live there. And they came and they started building even and planting. But a lot of them died because the massacres began again. They started killing them. So this time they left, some for Hayastan, and some of them, they were going to Hayastan, but they thought the roads were closed, so they went down to Iraq. And this was a part where my father and a lot of your people probably came through. And then of course they went to Iraq and from on to Jerusalem and all over the Middle East. The Vanetis like gurung. You played gurung today, right? Didn't you play the crane? They like the crane. That's their bird. But today I'm going to be finishing with a poem that's not about the gurung, but it's about the swallow, which is a migrating bird, Zizernak in Armenian. And I want to read this to you because it's so much like us. The swallow was building its nest. He was singing and he was building. And every time he would add a twig, he would remember his old nest. He had built a nest once, and he had repaired it many times. But this time, when he returned, he found the nest in ruins. And now, once again, he was building his nest, and he was singing. And every time he added a twig, he remembered his old nest. The Vanetis, just like the rest of the Armenian, came back, tried to rebuild, but they found everything in ruins. Their nest was in ruins. So they went all over the world, and they built there. Even though they had this gaping wound in their hearts that would never go away, they still sang, they still danced, they built churches, they built schools, they built families. I mean, they raised families. The work still continues today. A few days before Thanksgiving, and I would like to thank those people who fought, because that's the reason we are here today. But above all, I would like to thank the ordinary people, and that includes you, the ordinary people who worked so hard and who gave their lives and who are still doing that today. Thank you.